We are live here on Talkin Badgers, and I got some thoughts about the new transfer portal rules in the NCAA. I know it's the middle of the season, but I got some transfer portal thoughts I got to get off my chest. Welcome back to Talkin Badgers, powered by BadgerNotes.com. I am your host, Kedrick Stumbris. You can find me on the website formerly known as Twitter, all the various social medias at Talkin Badgers. And find the show, youtube.com/@TalkinBadgers. I got some thoughts on the new transfer portal rules, and we're going to talk some specifics on the Wisconsin Badgers football team a little bit and how it would overall affect them. But I think this is because there is some glaring spots at which the Badgers would be affected by these new transfer portal rules instituted by the NCAA. It deserves our time to talk about it a little bit here on this program, and we'll try to get to it a little bit in quick order here, because as much as Will Hanna out in the chat apparently does not sleep, I would like to sleep sometime this evening before heading down to Illinois tomorrow for Big Ten men's basketball media day. But appreciate all of you listening live. We got Wes saying he's numb, he's apathetic. It's a tough football season, of course, but college basketball right around the corner. College hockey in full swing. Lots going on. Will Hanna says he likes to see how wrong so many people are staying up late at night. I don't know, man. I'm hoping I'm not wrong on a lot on the show. We'll find out. We'll find out tonight. But the Wisconsin Badgers would be retroactively affected by the new transfer portal rules that are coming to college football. College football is moving from a 2 transfer portal window to a 1 transfer portal window. The first portal window was previously right after the close of the regular season, a winter portal window that opened December 9th and stayed open for 19 days to the 28th, and then a spring portal window from April 16th to the 25th. Of course, players don't have to be committed by then, but have to enter the transfer portal by that period of time, or at the very least declare to their program that they would like to be entered into the portal window. Now, Wisconsin picked up a few impact players in that spring portal window this season. That spring portal window is going away. There is one transfer portal window now that is going to run for only 2 weeks, cutting down that 19-day window to around 14, where players have to enter the portal between January 2nd and the 16th. There is no portal window in the spring. And if you remember the college football playoff invitational that exists, there is a little bit of an overlap there on the portal window. The time at which players need to enter the transfer portal overlaps with the CFP invitational, with that national championship game not being wrapped up until Martin Luther King Jr. Day, that on the 20th of January last year, now going to be on the January 19th in 2026. And even those playoff semifinals, right, all the way until January 10th, makes a little bit of a mess there for anybody who wants to enter the portal. You got to turn around, be done with that playoff semifinal, and immediately turn around and enter the portal by January 16th. And that was always something that existed. And of course, there is the other side of it that says, if you are playing the national title game, you're going to play that national title game after this portal window closes. There is a carve out. There is an exception. Players who play in a postseason game, they have an opportunity to enter the portal during a 5-day period after their final postseason game ends. So for anyone who's concerned about that overlap, the overlap does exist a little bit in theory. That the NCAA has decided to try to massage it by saying if you are playing deep into the playoff, you have until 5 days, beginning with the day following your final postseason game, to enter. The problem, however, is that transferring is still tied to your collegiate enrollment. And that makes for a few things. One, if you're going to have a portal window that technically doesn't open until January 2nd, a month after most teams in major college football are done playing their regular season, you're still going to have lots and lots of players declaring, on Twitter, regardless of, the officialness of that. Lots of players are going to be taking to social media and saying, I am entering the transfer portal. I've declared my intent to enter the transfer portal. So there's still going to be plenty of news going on. There's still going to be plenty of tampering going on. There's still going to be plenty of those players reaching out to other coaches, reaching out to those players in that month-long window before players technically even sniff the portal. On the flip side, then, by moving the portal window back to January 2nd, technically, if everyone was following the rules, which we all know they aren't, but let's give everyone the benefit of the doubt. If everyone's following the rules, you have disadvantaged those collegiate athletes because, look, transfer exists in both an athletic sense and in a university enrollment sense. This idea that the NCAA has some transfer portal is kind of a borrowed term, both from like European soccer leagues where clubs pay transfer fees for players to move between clubs and leagues. And then there's also the academic side where players are actually transferring schools. There still is a school component to all of this, regardless of how much players are attending classes in person, online, whatever. There is still a hard and fast rule in college athletics that you have to be enrolled in a degree-seeking program at that institution, which means that a transfer portal is still an academic process. This is the whole reason the Xavier Lucas situation exists, right? And the fact that the NCAA has no teeth to actually enforce transfer rules anyway. Again, we're kind of putting that to the wayside for the time being, but we'll circle back around to it. The reason the whole Xavier Lucas situation exists is because all they had to do, you have to transfer schools. You can play football at the school that you are enrolled at. There's not a ton the NCAA can do to reduce that possibility. The NCAA can't really enforce a rule to the contrary. They would lose in court. And so if everyone is following the rules, you have said that these students, if they finish their final exams and they are done with classes and they are no longer a degree-seeking student at one institution in mid-December, well, what? They still can't technically go take visits to other programs. And the University of Wisconsin, they start classes in the spring semester on that Tuesday following MLK Day. That means that students have, up until basically when the portal window closes to enroll at their new institution, but they can't even officially start talking to other schools up until 2 weeks beforehand. It's not something that is ever going to make sense. These transfer portal rules just aren't something that makes sense in a way because they will always be disadvantaging players. And that's why they're just simply not going to be followed. The more the NCAA tries to apply Band-Aids to player movement, the more it's going to simply create different ripple effects. I understand the want to, move the window a little bit, not have it go into the bulk of the beginning of the college football playoff, and you give teams a chance who are in these first round matchups on December 20th, on December 21st, and students to still play in those games, and a Bo Pribula doesn't have to choose to walk away from a college football playoff team that he plays an active role in Penn State because he needs to be able to seek his transfer portal spot because there are only so many of those spots to go around for starting quarterbacks in college football. And you want to make sure that that student has that opportunity to do both things, but they are still a student. But they are still someone who has to look out for their own interests. And there's nothing stopping this spring portal window from actually existing, getting back around to the Xavier Lucas of it all. As much as the NCAA wants to say this spring football window doesn't exist, if a Xavier Lucas is still allowed to withdraw from classes at one university and enroll at another. And there's no reason he should not be able to do that he has not had that right collectively bargained away, absent some other enforceable contract. There's no reason any student can't go through spring practice with one team, withdraw themselves as a matriculating student at that institution, and then enroll with a new program in summer classes to go through, summer workouts with a team ahead of the fall football schedule. There's just nothing that's going to stop them. The NCAA has said as much, that they can't enforce these portal windows if a student just simply is going to enroll at another school. There's nothing that they can do. It feels like a very silly Band-Aid. And one that just very clearly, based on the evidence that we've seen, won't do anything. The other Band-Aid that's applied here is schools like Virginia Tech, like Oklahoma State, that have fired their coaches mid-season right now has triggered a transfer portal window for any player on that roster. Any player on a roster who is at a school that has made a head coach firing automatically has 30 days to enter the transfer portal. Automatically. That's being changed now to that portal window does not open until 5 days after a new coach is hired. And I guess that means, it's not just reporting of that coach. It's actually putting pen to paper and that contract is signed, right? When I'm trying to remember, there were a couple of players who entered who portaled like in that 30-day window after Paul Chryst was fired at Wisconsin. That wouldn't happen now. Players would have had to wait to technically enter the portal until after Luke Fickell was hired at the school. And then that triggers, 5 days after a new head coach is hired or announced. That triggers a 15-day window that players can enter. Nonetheless, what stops that player from saying, I'm going to just sit out games? There's nothing to stop. You cannot force that player to play games. Again, absent another enforceable contract with an NIL deal, right? And maybe that player just says, I will I will go without the money. There's just not a lot people can do. Enforcing these transfer portal rules is entirely silly. It's simply not possible, as we've seen, without players collectively bargaining their movement rights away. And the NCAA has basically admitted as such. So frankly, for the most part, players are going to follow. Players and teams are going to follow this window. That's when the bulk of movement is going to happen. And we're going to have a very interesting December where players enter the portal and then a slew of announcements coming in January. I cannot wait for some of the news to start trickling out and find out, which programs are very actively tampering in December, as we learn early on, which players have committed to schools, despite the fact that they have not actually entered the portal from their old schools, as they are committing to a new school in December, despite them not actually being able to enter the portal from their old school until January. Or you have, this NFL free agency, the NBA legal tampering period kind of a thing, right? During free agency. And all of a sudden, as soon as the legal tampering period opens, we know right away who is signing with whom. Well, I bet there's going to come a lot of that as soon as the calendar strikes January 2nd. There's going to be a lot of, we know who's going where. We know who's signing with whom. We know who is enrolling at which new school, because all of this is going to happen behind the scenes during January in this huge dead period between the regular season and the transfer portal. None of it makes a ton of sense to me. I don't love all of it. I don't know what the answer is, other than you have to get to a place for the NCAA. If you want your rules to have teeth, you have to allow athletes to collectively bargain their movement rights away. It's the only thing that you can do. If all the rules are followed, which, again, big if. I've made it clear what I believe on that front. I believe that's not going to happen. But if all those rules are followed, that does lead to certain implications for a team like Wisconsin. Wisconsin obtained a good number of impact players on its roster in the spring portal window this year, that the portal window that is going away. And there is some selection bias in that, right? Where if Wisconsin, if any program is going to the spring portal window to bring in talent, it is because they are trying to cover a weakness on the roster, and likely any player that is brought in is going to be an impact player if they're brought in through that window, or at least, expected to be a program that is hoping to be. I would have to go around, the Big Ten, major college football to see more of my thoughts on that. But I imagine that's true. Wisconsin brought in Lance Mason, of course, from Missouri State, and he's an impact player for this Wisconsin football team. A fantastic spring portal evaluation after Tanner Kojal goes out during the spring portal window. He spring footballed with Wisconsin and said no thanks. Davis Heinzen, of course, brought in to be the starting left tackle for this program. Not the starting left tackle for this Wisconsin Badgers football program, but seemingly their starting center, despite him never playing center ever before, maybe, at least not at the collegiate level, not when he was at Central Michigan. And then, of course, the skipper himself, starting quarterback Hunter Simmons, brought in via the Salukis, Southern Illinois, in the spring portal window. And now he is starting football games, plural. I would imagine. It seems very obvious to me that he's going to be the starter on Saturday. Luke Fickell said as long as Billy Edwards does not go on Saturday, it's going to be Hunter Simmons getting the majority of those reps. And I don't believe that Billy Edwards is going to play football this week. So that's a lot of guys for Wisconsin in a portal window that no longer exists. And if all the rules are followed, that's rough. If you are a team that has some holes, that's rough. If you are a team that you suffers an unexpected injury in fall camp, of course, everybody is going to be going through it, but it's going to affect different teams in different ways. I am fascinated at seeing what happens there. With movement in December, with movement in January, I don't know what is going to happen. I imagine movement rules, tampering rules are not going to be followed. It's my hunch, because that's the way college football always has been, and the way college football has been ramping up more and more aggressively in the last 2-3, call it 4 years. So those are my thoughts on the new portal windows changing. NCAA also allowing collegiate athletes to gamble on professional sports, by the way. I think that's clearly a disaster waiting to happen. I think that is clearly a change that is going to produce some of the most absurd college football stories that you can imagine, because it's college football. And there was some real messiness to this Iowa State sports gambling investigation. So some real messiness that led to a lot of that getting thrown out because law enforcement did not follow the rules. But I can already envision the story about somebody from a college football program gambling on a collegiate team and saying, no, I did not mean to bet on the Stanford Cardinal. I was betting on the Arizona Cardinals. Or saying, oh, I placed you busted me for betting on the Georgia Bulldogs, who I was playing that week. No. I just saw the G. I thought I was betting on the Green Bay Packers. It's something that is going to produce, I can only imagine, the most absurd college football stories. And I know that the examples I'm throwing out are patently absurd. I know that. I didn't mean to bet on the Charlotte 49ers. I meant to bet on the San Francisco 49ers. Or there's a college football team that's the 49ers that I can't remember which one it is. I don't think it is. Yeah, it is Charlotte. All right, I got that. The fact that these examples are absurd is what makes them the most likely college football stories match, quite frankly. So that's what I got. Man, you all in the comments tonight are going off on Luke Luke Fickle, which is a name that I have not said many times in this podcast tonight. Oh gosh. Wes says overlap is stupid. They should wait until after the national championship game. Again, agreed. I think fortunately there is this this rule implemented where if players are playing in a game, they get 5 days after the fact, after their season is finished, after their postseason is finished, to enter the portal. The problem with the calendar now, the problem with how far into January the college football playoff invitational extends, is that you start running up against enrollment deadlines at schools. And ultimately, none of this is going to be pretty. None of this is going to make 100% sense. None of this is going to create a system in which the rules are followed to a T and I's are dotted and everything looks perfect, as long as all this is tied to players who have to be enrolled at universities, and those players have not collectively bargained their movement rights away. That's a matter of fact. Yeah, that's, gosh, lots of you folks. Oh goodness. Okay, I think that's going to do it. While the chat continues to pop off about the Iowa game this upcoming weekend, we'll have some thoughts on that. I imagine in the feed still. Hoping to get Seamus on the program this upcoming week. Dylan Graff and I are headed to Big Ten Media Day tomorrow in Illinois. Hopefully having some takeaways from there. Talking to the Wisconsin Badgers men's basketball team. Talking to programs across the Big Ten, trying to get a pulse of the conference before they get off and running. I think this is going to be a pretty solid Badgers basketball team. A slight step back from last season, but I think they're going to finish the season wearing home whites to start the NCAA tournament. I have pretty good confidence in that. But this has been Talkin Badgers. I have been Kedrick Stumbris. You can follow the show at Talkin Badgers on the website formerly known as Twitter, and youtube.com/@TalkinBadgers. Hit the like button if you're still here at this absurd hour of the evening. I guess not that absurd. It's 10:53 p.m., but I gotta get to bed. I gotta hit the hay. We'll be back with another show with intrepid entrepreneur Dylan Graff, publisher, owner, BadgerNotes.com, as we wrap up Big Ten basketball media days soon. We'll have a show, instant reaction show of types after the Iowa game, because I'll be covering that on Saturday, and should be an interesting time as Luke Fickle tries to get his first win over the Iowa Hawkeyes. Until we talk to you all again very soon on Wisconsin.